just begin by giving thanks. Thank you first to God for continuing to bless me and guide me on this journey, for continuing to grant me boldness, determination, courage, and vision in my life. In the book's acknowledgement section, I tried as best I could to show my appreciation to everyone that had a hand in helping me figure out what this book was about. But let me just sort of thank a few people. Thank you first to the entire team at the University Press of Kentucky, especially acquisitions editor Ann Dean Dotson, who was acquisitions editor at the time, who made publishing my first book such a wonderful experience all around. The press was always transparent and responsive to all of my questions and concerns individually. The Civil Rights and Struggle for Black Equality in the 20th Century series, edited by Cynthia Griggs Fleming, Stephen F. Lawson, and Dr. Favors' mentor, Hassan Kwame Jeffries. So you can see all the connections that historians have with one another, right? And the support that we all get from one another. That series has been an excellent series in terms of helping to shape the field of African-American history. Also, thank you to my family, friends, and colleagues for your support and encouragement. I would especially like to thank my wife, Ebony Winford, who, even going back to my dissertation and drafts of the book, also has a PhD in psychology, gave me really good feedback from copy editing and just sort of lighting a fire under me when I was lagging a little bit in terms of getting the work done. Thank you also, finally, to the award selection committee and the sponsors of the Lillian E. Smith Book Award. And these include the University of Georgia Libraries, the Southern Regional Council, the Georgia Center for the Book, and the DeKalb Public Library at Piedmont and Piedmont College. Let me say that at the University of Tennessee, I have established I've co-founded the Fleming Morrow Endowment in African American History, named in honor of two pioneer historians, Cynthia Griggs Fleming, who is a professor emerita at the University of Tennessee, and Dr. John H. Morrow Jr., who is actually a professor at the University of Georgia. We're always looking for support to continue the work of African American history. Like Dr. Favors noted, historically Black colleges are vitally important. I graduated from North Carolina Central University, which in North Carolina is a rival to A&T State University, but I'm honored to receive this award alongside Professor Favors. And let me read, just to give you a sense of how important these institutions are. I want to read a little bit from my acknowledgement section where I thank some of my mentors at North Carolina Central University. The journey into the historical profession began at my alma mater, North Carolina Central University in Durham, North Carolina. These professors and mentors are a part of my extended Eagle family because they taught me to soar and always demonstrated a genuine concern to their students. Thanks to Carlton Wilson, Dr. Jerry Gershenhorn, or Doctors Carlton Wilson, Jerry Gershenhorn, Freddie Parker, Jim Harper, Lydia Lindsay, Percy Murray, Henry Louis Suggs, Bayuna Muhammad, and the late Ronaldo Lawson. The late Sylvia M. Jacobs introduced her students to the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, and I am forever grateful to her for doing so. And I share this alongside a great group of other colleagues and friends trained at the Sloping Hills, the Verdant Green. This is a special honor, given that this award was established by the Southern Regional Council in 1966 following Smith's death. The Southern Regional Council is an organization that I spent a lot of time researching and learning about because it was one of the organizations among many that John Hervey Wheeler worked so closely with since its founding in 1944. His involvement in that organization began with him serving as vice president, as a member of his executive board, chairman of the executive board, and at the same time held an executive position with the North Carolina's affiliate SRC organization, the North Carolina Council on Human Relations. And in 1963, over the course of several months, a three-person committee recommended John Wheeler for election at the annual conference to become the next president of the Southern Regional Council to replace outgoing President James McBride Dabbs. The annual conference was planned for the week of November 22nd, 1963, and actually had to be postponed after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. So John Hervey Wheeler began his tenure as Southern Regional Council president in January 1964. He served until 1969 and was in fact president of the organization in 1966 when this book award was established. A long list of Black leaders led in the Southern Regional Council's inception, from organizing meetings in Durham, North Carolina, October 20th, 1942, to Atlanta, Georgia, and Richmond, Virginia in 1944. In the Southern Regional Council's transition from the Commission on Interracial Cooperation. Around the same time that the Southern Regional Council began, it did not take a public stance against segregation. It was folk like Lillian Smith, among others, who were very vocal. In the words of the Southern Regional Council's first executive director, Guy Benton Johnson, in a 1968 account of the organization's history, quote, "Our good friend Lillian Smith signed in with supporting statement in favor of taking a public stance against segregation, indicating that she would hold aloof from the Southern Regional Council until it came clean on the issue of segregation." And it wasn't until 1951 that the Southern Regional Council released a public statement titled "The South of the Future," where the organization denounced segregation. And I believe this statement is still relevant for us today. It says, quote, "The South of the future is a South freed of stultifying inheritances from the past. It is a South where the measure of a man will be his ability, not his race, where a common citizenship will work in democratic understanding for the common good, where all who labor will be rewarded in proportion to their skill and achievement, where all can feel confident of a personal safety and equality before the law, where there will exist no double standard in housing, health, education, and other public services." Through the Southern Regional Council, John Hervey Wheeler mentored people like Vernon E. Jordan Jr., the second director of the Voter Education Project, who thankfully was one of the individuals who wrote a blurb of the book, John Hervey Wheeler, Black Banking and the Economic Struggle for Civil Rights, alongside Drs. Charles W. McKinney Jr. and Jerry Gershonhorn. Jordan said of John Wheeler, quote, he said that John Wheeler, quote, "like the Southern Regional Council, because it was an organization based in research, and the research that it did, it dispensed throughout the South, and it helped people think about the issues in ways that they had not thought about the issues before. If one were going to be an advocate," Jordan continued, "you had to have information, and your information had to be accurate and right. And this advocacy by the council and his research had impact. In the last decade of his life, John Wheeler counseled that, quote, "the best tactics are to work through the courts, become involved in politics, and use organized pressure." I didn't set out to write a book about civil rights and Black business history. In my naivete, I felt like civil rights history had already been done, right? But how untrue that was. John Wheeler was such a interesting figure to explore and learn about his life, because at the height of the modern civil rights movement in the mid 20th century South, John Hervey Wheeler had his hands in everything related to civil rights and Black business history, right? He was a kind of a behind the scenes power broker, someone who was not necessarily out front in the ways that we tend to think about civil rights leadership. And so this book really only captures a very small crumb of Wheeler's larger story. And I was thankful that the Robert W. Woodruff Library at the Atlanta University Center, who received the collection, the John Hervey Wheeler papers in 1979. So from 1979 all the way through 2006, those papers had sat in the archives of the library. And it was in 2006 that I had the opportunity to begin to explore those materials. And the archives, the head archivist, allowed me to go into the collection for the first time. And it was a 10-year period between 2006 and 2016 before those materials were fully processed and open to researchers. And so I was so very thankful to have the support of archives, especially our archives at our historically Black colleges and universities hold a significant amount of research and materials that are rich in helping us uncover and continue to tell these stories. In this book, I try to capture the approach that John Hervey Wheeler took to his civil rights activism. John Wheeler argued, and his career in activism demonstrates this idea of what I like to call New South prosperity. In other words, New South prosperity was this idea that full citizenship, racial equality, and civil rights were actually the prerequisites for Black economic power. Economic independence, like so many people had argued in the first few decades of the 20th century, was not possible from John Wheeler's perspective until they first had citizenship rights. All right. More importantly, John Wheeler felt that Black economic power was crucial in order for the South to advance materially when compared to other regions. Wheeler navigated and sought to fulfill the ideas of New South prosperity through what I like to call Black business activism. He's used his economic sense as a Black banker, his legal skills as a civil rights lawyer to fight through the courts. He utilized organizational pressure and advocated Black political participation to bring about the kind of change he envisioned. One of his favorite quotes and refrains, I think is vitally important when we think about the new political age that we're in now. He said, quote, "The battle for freedom begins every morning." And essentially what that meant was the struggle for freedom and citizenship was something that was continuous. It was something that was not going to happen overnight. And once you worked on a particular issue and felt that you had achieved and solved that problem, you still had to put your clothes on the next day. You had to get up the next morning, the next day, because there was always another issue that needed to be addressed. So when I look at the life of John Wheeler, it definitely captures the essence of that motto that he lived by. And I think there are significant lessons for us in this, in understanding the story of John Hervey Wheeler. Let me close by, again, thanking the Lillian Smith Book Award Selection Committee and all of the sponsors for this very important and heartfelt recognition. I'm honored to have my name mentioned alongside so many great historians and other authors, including Professor Favors, whose work has helped move this narrative forward in profound ways. Thank you.